You covered one of the premier games that was, marquee games yesterday. You were there in attendance for the Las Vegas Aces taking on Caitlin Clark's Indiana Fever. We know anytime Caitlin Clark is on the schedule, it's box office. They moved to a bigger arena for this game, right?
Right. They were at T-Mobile, which is can hold almost 20,000 fans, and they were sold out. So,
Incredible. And we know the Aces sell out their regular arena and they're also a very popular team. So just, two teams with two really big stars, Caitlin Clark, Asia Wilson, but also two teams that came into the matchup somewhat struggling. Two teams who Vegas had as contenders, who many had as contenders ahead of the season. And both teams right now currently sit at 6 and 7. So both are one game under 500.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. They are in the seventh and eighth spot rather. So the Aces are seventh because they own the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Indiana Fever, and the Fever at eight. So if someone were to tell you this is where these two teams would be at this point in the season, what would have been your reaction, Callie?
Definitely shock. I think, as you said, these were two teams that seemed to have the makings of a contender. I mean, I think back a lot to the Aces like training camp talk, and Becky Hammon was talking about how she has a roster of hungry wolves and how
Yeah.
she's done with dogs. She wants hungry wolves. So she felt like she had the energy she needed from this team, and she felt like she had the personnel. And like on paper, that all made sense to me. I was like, okay, like this makes sense. Yes, they've lost some players, but this is a team that has won two championships and they have a lot of those key pieces still. So
Yeah.
um, to kind of watch them come out and struggle, even like without Asia Wilson, with Asia Wilson, has been a surprise. And I think it's similar with the Fever, where it's like they made all these really exciting off-season moves, and then they already had like, they made the playoffs last season, so they had those people Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston to run it back. I'm thinking, okay, they're going to look great this year. And the Indiana
Yeah.
Fever have had games, I think, maybe some even more convincing than the Aces have had. Like this game
I would
between the
actually
Aces and
disagree with
Fever,
that because
I mean,
I think they blew out the Chicago Sky, and it's like, okay, with all due respect, it's the Chicago Sky. And then they beat the New York Liberty, but it was the New York Liberty team that was missing some really key pieces. And so it's still good to win. I don't want to discredit that. But this is just like a lot of people rate people beating the Aces as like really good. And I'm like, but is it? Because this version of the Aces, so it's kind of like how do you value those wins, right? So like to me, these two teams for similar reasons and different reasons have very similar arcs that came coming into this game, right? Both of their best players missed some games. Asia Wilson because of concussion, and Caitlin Clark because she was dealing with like a different injury. It was a strain, but both of them were had issues that took them out for a few games from their teams. And then, like we said, they both are coming in sort of like even before Caitlin Clark went out, they were 2-2. So they were at 500 before she even went out with injury. So it's kind of like they win, then they lose, they win, then they lose. And the Aces, a sort of similar trajectory. So the Aces were what, on a 3 game losing streak before this game, Callie? Is that
yeah.
right? So they were desperate to win. Caitlin Clark and the Fever, they had just lost the game to the Valkyries. The Aces know something about that because they got blown out by the Valkyries. So both of these teams lost to the Golden State Valkyries expansion team. So it was a really big matchup, and so the Aces would take this one. Now in the early going, it looked like Indiana was. They weren't like to me, they looked in the start to be the better team. Like the way they were playing, it was sort of like, man, if they start knocking down some shots, the Aces might be in trouble because the Aces still looked a little disjointed. And then as the game continued, I thought in the second half, the Aces were so much better. There's been a lot of talk around their third quarters, Callie. And this might be, I'm not saying it was a perfect game, but it might be the most complete game that they've played for the season.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Becky Hammon said that in the post-game press conference. She was asked because it's like at this point it feels like deja vu or like Groundhog Day or something. Like you're covering an Aces game and you feel like you're seeing the same thing over and over again, and you're like preparing for that post-game press conference where Becky Hammon is going to go, you can't be in this league and not play a full 40 minutes. You know what I mean? So like that's what we're all preparing for. When she was asked about it, she was like, no, this was actually pretty close. And I think that you saw that, they came
They
out.
looked happy after the game.
Yeah, I mean there was happiness, before the game. Becky talked about how it's hard to be happy and like show happiness when you're losing. And they were on a 3-game losing streak, like you said, entering the game. But she was like, you can always choose to find joy. And so like I remember feeling like, going into this game against the Fever, I don't know how encouraging that is. It was getting really philosophical. But no, yeah, I think that, that first quarter was really interesting because you had, the Aces only trailed by 1 point by the end of it, but they had given up like 18 points in the paint compared to like the only 8 that they'd scored. And like Caitlin Clark was
Turnovers.
scoreless, but she was facilitating really well. Like
Yep.
I don't even know how many assists she had in the first quarter, but she was like effective in moving the ball and getting Aaliyah Boston engaged. By the end of the game, Aaliyah Boston had 26 points or something. So it was just like it was really interesting to watch the Aces kind of ride through and like continue to make adjustments and close it out because that's not something that they've really been able to do and win convincingly a lot this season.
Yeah, something else we saw too visibly was Asia Wilson being frustrated. Like her touch looked a little
Mhm.
off, just missing like shots right at the rim and shots that she would normally knock down in the mid range. And like I was giving Asia some grace. She's only 2 games back from a concussion, but she like before halftime like her stats were sort of like wonky. And then by the end of the game, Callie, she still finished with 24 points, 7 rebounds, 2 blocks. I mean, this is why people call her the best player in the world. To have the first half that she did and still finish with this kind of game is also just a tremendous effort from Asia Wilson. But you could see that she was so determined to get it
Yeah.
going and to like put this team on her back. But it was a balanced effort. Like she really got something from everyone. I mean, if you like look at the stats from all the different players who played, Jackie Young, 19-7, 5 assists, Callie. I'm going to like really harp on the 5 assists, right? 18 3 and 3 from Chelsea Gray. She shot 67% from the field. 10 5 and 5 from Jewel Lloyd. And the rookie, Aaliyah Nye, 11 points, 3 of 5 from 3 point, 57% from the field. And Aaliyah Nye played more minutes than Kia Stokes yesterday, Callie.
Yeah, I mean, Aaliyah Nye has been such an exciting rookie to watch. I feel like I mentioned this too the last time we talked, but like every single time I see her on the court, I feel like she looks better. She already had like that pro confidence from the first preseason game. That was clear, but she really can shoot the heck out of the ball. Like that's one thing that you can count on her for. Like do not leave her open in the corner. Don't leave her open at the top of the key. Like she can really like she's gonna shoot the ball. And so I think that commands some respect and really opens like open things up spacing wise for the Aces, which is why I mean I think it's beneficial for her to get so many minutes. Like they need space for their offense to work. And unfortunately, sometimes with Kia, that's not always the case. And Chelsea talked about that post game. So did Asia. Like they Asia was like, we're grateful for Kia, because there are things that she does that are important. But I do think that, they want her to take more layups. They want her, to become more of an offensive threat. I think she only had like two layup attempts or something like that against the Fever. And that's maybe not ideal, but it can work. It's worked for the Aces when they have pieces like Aaliyah Nye, who are helping to create that space. Like, we've talked about this. They've won championships with Kia Stokes. So, I mean, maybe not necessarily it's necessary to ring the alarm. But yeah, I thought Aaliyah Nye was huge. And Asia, like overcoming, she was 2 of 13 from the field in the first half. Like 2 field goals in 2 quarters is rough. And I remember after the second field goal, she like you could see the frustration, like in her face, like she was relieved it went in, but then
Yeah,
like
you could see it
like
throughout the
dang,
first half. Like every time
yeah,
she missed something, she was like frustrated.
yeah. But she talked about how her teammates were really the ones that carried her through. Because I asked her about it post game. She was joking that she wasn't going to answer my question at first because I mentioned that she had a rough shooting. But she was just joking and saying like her teammates really carried her through. She knows that they rely on her, and the fact that they continue to trust her through that type of shooting performance is really what it allowed her to like close it out.
So have the Aces turned a corner, Callie? I mean, I personally had thought, honestly, in the games without Asia, that they had looked better. And so I was like, so now with Asia coming back, maybe they can really start to resemble the team we somewhat know them to be. And I think over that time we saw Aaliyah Nye getting comfortable. And if she's going to be, even if Becky's not going to move her into the starting lineup, if she's going to play starter minutes and play more minutes than Kia and kind of be that fifth person, almost like the new Alicia Clark, then maybe, Callie, I don't know.
I mean, I think that it has the potential to be a turning point, right? Like you're seeing improvement in their ability to like be consistent and adjust. So those are things that you want to see from the Aces. I still have concerns about the defense. I know that Becky Hammond didn't really harp on it that much after the game, but like the players did. They were talking about points in the paint. They gave up like 50 something points in the paint. Right now, they're second to last in the league in the amount of points in the paint that they're allowing their opponents to score. It's like an average of 39 per game. That's a lot. And like I part of that is because of their defense. You talk like you heard Asia talk about how they really want to like they're just working to learn their scheme. And this is word for word what she said, unprompted. Like they're trying to just figure out and adjust to how to defend the pick and roll. And that was a real problem for them. It's been a problem for them. And so I don't know if I like saw a huge improvement there in this game. You know what I mean? But I do think for them to be able to close it out despite that issue, that is encouraging. But for me, I think a turning point is going to be a better all-around defensive effort in addition to the more, kind of equal distribution of scoring that you saw against the Fever.
Yeah, I'm curious to see the not. I'm gonna look and see because to me there was a notable difference in the defense the second half versus the first half, and so I don't know if they figured out something like during the game, but it looked different, and I wonder if the numbers support that. But to be determined. I agree with you. Like I'm not quite ready yet to say the Aces are back, but obviously this win was really important for them to get and get out of that losing streak. So that brings us to the Indiana Fever. You know, they were without Caitlin Clark, as we mentioned earlier in the year, and she had a quad strain, and she's back. And that her first came back was against the Liberty, and she was amazing in that game. And so I think people were sort of expecting like, okay, they're just gonna like go on a run now. And then like they went to the Bay and they lost to the Valkyries, and then they lost to the Aces. And so I'm still not really sure what to make of this Fever team.
I mean, I do think so much of what the Fever are wanting to do hinges on Caitlin Clark, right? And she's currently in the midst of a bit of a shooting slump.
Yeah.
She's 1 for 17 from the 3-point line between over her last two games, which are those two losses that you're referring to. Yeah, there's the graphic, 1 for 17. So I think, I mean, I hope I didn't say free throw line. I meant to say 1 for 17 from the 3-point line. But I think that that's really, that's key. Like they talk about spacing, opening up the floor. If Caitlin Clark is making shots, and that also allows them to push the pace. You hear a lot of teams talk about the pace the Indiana Fever play with, but when they're like forcing other teams to take the ball out of the basket on a bunch of possessions, that allows them to control the game, and that really wasn't the case against the Aces. So I think a lot of it just hinges on that. And one thing I do think is interesting is that Caitlin Clark talked when she got to Las Vegas. The Fever had practice at UNLV, and she talked about one of the lessons that she's learned since her rookie year is not to be such a perfectionist. Like she talked about how poor performances last year would really like bring her down and she would really harp on them. She's trying not to do that this year. So I do think if you can, you hear about this like when you're playing basketball as a kid, they talk about having like a goldfish memory and stuff like that. If that's something that Caitlin Clark can do, like shooting slumps happen, and
Right.
she can overcome that. But I do think that that's a huge part of what the Fever are trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I certainly don't expect shooting woes to continue for Caitlin Clark. And so I expect the Fever and the Aces to get better. I do. they just both, I think both teams need to be really careful about how far back they fall in the standings, because if they remain in 7 and 8 right now, they would be facing the Lynx and the Liberty in the first round. And I don't think that's something that either team wants. So there's still plenty of season for both of these teams to improve. We'll see what happens, but definitely Caitlin Clark, we know the shooting is going to come back. It will be there. And I expect some wins to start coming for them, and likewise for the Aces.